Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this ill-conceived agreement between our current administration and the fanatical regime ruling the nation of Iran. I find it impossible to understand how those who are sworn to protect the security and interests of the American people could enter into such a one-sided deal. This is a deal that expands the lethal potential of a ruthless regime by giving them a path to a nuclear weapon, a regime whose stated objective is the destruction of the United States, a regime committed to the complete and utter destruction of Israel, our most trusted friend and ally in the Middle East, and a regime that almost no one believes will honor this deal. It is incomprehensible that we would so blindly ignore the warnings of the world's most aggressive supporter of terrorism by allowing them access to $150 billion in assets and allowing them to use those assets to protect our nation and our allies. If the rantings of this regime are not enough to cause us to reject this deal, then we should let history instruct us. This regime has been responsible for the deaths of hundreds of American soldiers. This regime has been responsible for the deaths of innocent civilians in Israel and other nations. And in 2009, this regime murdered their own citizens who courageously advocated for the freedom of the Iranian people. The actions of the Iranian regime speak for themselves. Mr. Speaker, history is a great teacher, and I believe the past mistakes of world leaders who failed to recognize the lethal danger posed by ruthless and ambitious regimes have been written in the pages of history with the blood of millions upon millions of people. We must not allow our nation to take rank with those nations and leaders from the past who chose appeasement over courage, who chose to take what appeared to them to be the easy path instead of bearing the responsibility of making the harder decision because it was the right decision. If the administration is correct that allowing the ruling regime in Iran to become armed with nuclear weapons will pose no threat to America or Israel, then no one will remember how the members of this Congress voted. But if this administration and the supporters of this agreement are wrong and we suffer a catastrophic loss of lives, no one will ever forget what we did here. We will bear the burden of this vote for the rest of our lives. Americans' foreign policy is at a crossroads. I'm reminded of how a great president described how we should deal with dangerous nations. President Theodore Roosevelt said we should speak softly and carry a big stick. He described this approach as the exercise of intelligent forethought and of decisive action sufficiently far in advance of any likely crisis. This deal does not meet that standard. Mr. Speaker, this is the time when the burden of leadership that has been entrusted to every member of Congress falls most heavily upon us. The American people look to us to do our duty and bear this responsibility without regard to party or politics, to put their safety and security first and foremost. I urge all the members of this House to put aside the politics and partisanship that otherwise divide us and stand together in opposition to this deal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the balance of my time.